Welcome to the first part of the video series on Chapter 1, Origins. I like to start off this segment by asking that question, why are humans affected by the loss of a famous person? And what does that say about our society and our culture? So you may want to take a minute to think about that. This year we lost a famous sports figure, Kobe Bryant. And you see a picture of him up in the top left along with his daughter, and they were both killed in a helicopter crash. His life was lived in public, and he used that notoriety to do good for the world. He not only taught kids basketball and was a great proponent of education, but he also gave his time and his money in so many different positive ways. So when the world lost him, everybody, even though they hadn't personally met him, felt the impact of his death. And that happens a lot with famous people. More recently, we've lost Chadwick Boseman. He was known for his portrayal of Black Panther. He also, for sports, baseball fans out there, he was also played the role of Jackie Robinson in the movie 42. Jackie Robinson was a famous baseball player who broke down race barriers. And so Boseman, after a 4-year battle with cancer that, most people didn't even know he had cancer, he continued to shoot movies and impact the world. So his death impacted society. Same can be true for any sort of famous person. So when you think about that, what does this say about us as a society or as a culture? Well, for one thing, it tells us that throughout the ages, we have needed heroes. We need role models. We need people who are going to provide us with the standards and goals that we need to strive for. So today we begin our timeline travel from first civilizations all through, to modern times. So we'll learn about the people, their existence, and their legacy that's left behind as footprints. Your textbook is even called Landmarks in Humanities, and that's just what we look at in this course, those landmarks that are left behind, those artifacts, those legacies of previous civilizations and their people. So, as we touched on in the What is Humanities lecture series, the prehistoric period was before the written word. As far as prehistoric cultures, there are 3 distinct cultures that are prevalent in that prehistoric time period. There's the Paleolithic, which is the old Stone Age. You've got the Mesolithic, which is the transitional stone. And you've got the Neolithic, which is the new stone. So those are the 3 cultures that we find in this prehistoric period. We'll be talking about each one of these individually. Remember that since the dawn of time, people have been trying to survive by finding their place in the world. They've been asking questions about their existence, and they've been trying to survive problems in the midst of living a daily life. So we see from what they left behind their attempts to solve their current problems and provide answers. So let's look at that old Stone Age, that Paleolithic culture. And from this culture, one of the things that we have left behind are those remnants of the tools that they used. So one of their accomplishment was making tools. Remember that prehistoric people's primary act of they were trying to extend their control over nature. That was their biggest issue. Whether that was protecting themselves from animals, whether that was using weapons to hunt animals, or just having those tools they needed for everyday life. This gives us, these tools show us a problem-solving behavior in these early people. The earliest tools and weapons that we have and that have been found in Africa and East Asia. They found things like cleavers, chisels, spears, harpoons, hand axes, and a wide variety of choppers. We see the hunting technology that is evolving during this period of climate change that we call the Ice Age. We also see those Paleolithic people forced to migrate They would follow the animals, and when the animals moved, they needed to move, and they had to migrate, or they had to adapt to changing conditions during that ice age. So by the end of that ice age, fire is discovered, and this is, of course, used by hunter and gatherers for safety against other animals. It would scare wild animals off. It provided warmth for them, and it also provided them with an opportunity for preparing food. Also, something we see from this Paleolithic culture is the burial of the dead. They would bury their dead, and they would include their tools, their weapons, and any of their personal effects in those graves. This gives us evidence of a self-conscious population with memory and foresight. So again, we see this evolving of the human. They would have a ritual preparation of the deceased, and this suggests a fear of the dead or anticipation of life after death. So maybe they put these tools and weapons and personal effects in the grave to memorialize the person, or maybe they put them there so that if there is an afterlife, they have the tools they need to survive. Another part of Paleolithic culture that we have left behind are cave paintings. And there's a wonderful video that you can watch. I will be posting the video links in Blackboard for you so that you can view it outside of these video lectures. We have found thousands of paintings and carvings, and most of these discoveries have been done just within the last 70 years. So in the life of your grandparent, these have been found on the walls of caves and surfaces of rocks. Some of the Paleolithic sites that we found, these are Europe, Africa, Australia, Indonesia, and North America. Now, these cave paintings contain mysterious markings and lifelike images of animals. Now, remember, hunting was a huge part of that earliest culture, of that Paleolithic culture. So it's not surprising that we see a lot of images of animals on the walls. These provide a vital record of long extinct animals. So the drawings may look a little weird and distorted to us, but there were different kinds of animals back then. They reveal an extraordinary technical sophistication and a high degree of naturalism. So there was a fidelity to nature when they created these. So the big question has been, what is the purpose and function of these drawings? Well, some of them might be decorations for the cave. Some of them might be records of a hunt. Maybe they were kind of boasting about the hunt that they made. Or maybe this was, some scholars even wonder if these are kind of a virtual way to plan out the hunting ritual. So maybe it's like a football playbook, okay, but for hunting. These were frequently drawn over a previous one. So whether it's the same tribe of people in this cave and they have recorded this phenomenal hunt, and then an even better one happens and they draw over it, or whether it's a case where they move out of the cave and other people move in. They're not sure. Others have a theory that the creatures may be totems or tribal emblems. Those would be symbols of male and female forces. Now, here's a close-up of the Hall of Bulls. This is the left wall in Lascaux Cave in France. This was one of the first ones that was discovered. So you can see just the very intricate appearance of these animals. And you got to remember, these folks didn't go down to Hobby Lobby and buy a paint set. Okay, they're having to create paint out of objects that they have. Sometimes it might just be a certain kind of stone or rock that when it is scraped on limestone in the cave, it creates a certain color. It could be berries. It could be any number of things that they could have used from their natural environment. Here's a close-up of this is in the Lascaux 2 cave. This is called Big Bull, and it's got, you see a big bull, and then you see a red cow, and other signs that their meaning may never fully be deciphered because we don't understand their symbols and signs. All right, so remember the Mesolithic and the Neolithic as we look at the changes that are made during these periods. So remember, the Mesolithic was that second time period and that second culture of people We call it the transitional stone. They're starting to domesticate plants and animals. They're starting to create stone circles and shrines. And then in that new stone age, the Neolithic culture, we see farming and food production. We see polished stone and bone tools and weapons, architecture, pottery, weaving. So there is a lot of progress and a lot of evolution happening. So when we talk about the evolution of the human culture, when you look at that Mesolithic culture, they saw the end of the Ice Age. So their communities began to domesticate plants and animals. No longer are they the hunter and gatherers that we had in that Paleolithic period. Now they're staying in one place. They're starting to, create or domesticate those animals, grow their own plants, and have animals that they grow or take care of that can be used for food, and they don't have to go hunting for their food. We see a continuation of that in the Neolithic culture, farming and food production. No longer are they a nomadic people. They're not moving around. They're more sedentary. Farmers gradually settled into what are considered permanent communities. They're there for ever, okay? They're not going to be moving around. Villages, they created villages. They would have mud and limestone faced huts, so they're creating places to live. Polished bone and stone tools, so they're evolving in their creation of tools. Earth's fertility and the seasonal cycle became big parts because they are now a farming culture. So how fertile the earth is and what's the perfect growing season in the cycle for doing this. We have female statuettes that have been found in graves. There's a lot of reference or that these statues have the appearance of an earth mother goddess kind of form. And we see the Cycladic figure that we'll talk about. So here is a very famous statue. This one's called the Venus of Willendorf, and this was found in Lower Austria, okay? They dated it like 25,000 to 20,000 BCE. It was made out of limestone. It's only about 4 3/8 inches high. It's got sexual characteristics that are boldly exaggerated. So you see the very large breast. You see the hips in this area that are very over exaggerated because the idea of that sexual being and fertility were very important. Another famous statue that we have from this period are these Cycladic figures, okay? This was probably played a similar role in rituals that sought the blessings of Mother Earth. So you see this, now this one's 24 3/4 inches tall, a lot taller than the Venus of Willendorf. But you do see things like you see the arms that are crossed in front of the body. You see the head that has these angular shapes in the nose. Don't see eyes, any of that. The legs are smaller, okay? It's almost impossible for these to stand up. It's kind of like a Barbie doll if you've ever tried to stand one of those up. Seasonal cycle and burials. To the farming families, the seasonal cycle was a primary fact of subsistence. And it's associated with birth, death, and regeneration. So by burying the dead, you return them to the earth as part of that life cycle. It was believed that the dead were messengers between the world of the living and the spirit world. And so we see structures like this in this prehistoric period. And we'll talk more about this in our next video segment.